As we talk, obviously the weather markets, it's having a lot of impact on us. What's happening in places like Ukraine and Washington, we know, impact us in agriculture. The pace of change right now seems to be, at least to me, seems to be mind-boggling. Information gets to be a very important commodity in an environment like this. Sarah, let's start with you on this part of the conversation. I'm curious, where do you go for daily information, and what kind of information are you looking for?
That's a great question. And, North Dakota, I think it's important to emphasize again that North Dakota has a lot of different crops. Everything from sugar beets to canola to peas and lentils, corn and soybeans. I mean, we've wheat. We're just a very diverse cropping system here. So when it comes of course, when I'm looking for agronomic decision or agronomic information, one of the places I do go is, of course, our Ag Experiment Station and Extension. North Dakota has great resources available there, but so that I really understand how national policy is affecting North Dakota, I depend on our local farm broadcasters. Quite frankly, like the Red River Farm Network. I listen to the Red River Farm Network all the time for information. They do a great job, and it helps really bring home what's happening in North Dakota in our unique area, but also how the national policy is affecting us here. So
that's good to hear. I'm curious, what kind of information do you want when you're tuning into media?
Of course, it's important to know and understand what is going on just logistically with the crop in our region, the crop across the United States, and how that might influence the markets of our local crop. From a policy perspective, I think it's important to keep an eye on your local state politics for how that can be affecting different things. And then, of course, how does the federal policy come down from DC and really influence what's going on here? Those are the things that I look for. Of course, now if you want to go to the international scale, I'm really trying to understand, how does this war in Ukraine keep affecting us? Of course, I mean, we can see the oil prices and all of those things, but that's I'm looking for the information that takes some of these places that feel so far away and really understand how they're affecting us here in North Dakota.
Bob, what about you? What do you count on as it relates to daily ag information?
Well, I certainly start out the morning in my office just reading what's happened locally, certainly what's happening in Washington, D.C., crop insurance changes. And then I've had the opportunity to do quite a bit of travel international, so somewhat understand those markets. So obviously what's happening in Ukraine is huge. Russia being such a big player in the fertilizer market, in the fuels market, and then what's happening with China and Taiwan, because they are the giant that buys most of what we produce. So you got to kind of, those black swans that you just don't see coming, you kind of got to try to stay on top of that. So I do quite a bit of reading right away in the morning. And then from there, it's radio like the Red River that we listen to all day long, listening to the markets, the commentaries. That's where I find out what's happening around the U.S. I certainly get calls once in a while from some of your friends in other ag areas. What's happening in the Dakotas? Well, we were visiting with Tim last week, and he said, well, I've been hearing what's happening in the Dakotas. I want to hear it from you. And I even got some friends down in South America, mainly in Brazil, the Mato Grosso area. So if I'm hearing, the markets are tough there or they're having trouble, I'll shoot him a quick email or a text and say, is it really as bad as what you're seeing? But all day long, and it's interesting as I get in a different tractor combine with my sons and son-in-laws are listening to, it's not music anymore, it's the markets as well, and you guys that put that out. And of course, the big other issue is we need you to tell our story. There's only about 2% of us in the US that are really involved in ag. So if the rest of the country doesn't understand what's happened, that's huge. And that's every bit as important that you tell that story to them as much as what you tell us.
Good point, Bob. I think we're really blessed in this business. I'm obviously biased, but I think through the whole spectrum, print, broadcast, digital, we've really got some tremendous journalists out there that are telling the story of agriculture. This group, Bob, yourself, Sarah, Tim, you're all very involved in your national trade organizations, your state groups, whatever the case may be on the local and regional level. Bob, you think that's why you're more engaged, or do you think that's the case for all of your friends and neighbors up and down the neighborhood?
Oh, definitely. I've had neighbors ask me, how can you afford to be gone so much? These are non-paying jobs. You take money out of your pocket, go do it. But the people that you meet and those opportunities, and you start seeing such a bigger picture. Always, in my father's time, probably 2 county areas what affected him. In my time, a state or 2 affected me, and in my son's times, I mean, they're always chatting with people in Iowa, Illinois, so they see a bigger picture. But yeah, that opportunity that I've had through state and national organizations has just been huge, and that's how I met you. That's how I meet all the other people, and you just build a trust level when we visit.
It's always great to learn about new things. Tim, what about you? Where do you go for information?
I started out as an AM radio lover. I'd be amiss if I didn't talk about my local WHO, and I kidded my radio guy that when I went and bought that truck, I made sure it could tune in to WHO so that I could hear it from about 185 miles away, and that was the reason I bought the truck. And so I've been an AM radio guy my whole entire life. That's talk show radio. And what I like about the farm broadcast is it educates me, and hopefully it's educating our consumer. The last time we saw marks like this was in 2008. We seen $7 corn, and we were at the bottom end of that sword because they showed a lady filling her car full of fuel or going to the grocery store, and she had to make a decision, and they were putting blame on the corn and soybean grower, on the farmer, that the commodity prices were high. And so I like to get that information, find out what our consumers think about our business and how we can react to it. The other thing, we're tied to the hip with these things. We have earbuds, at least my day, I have earbuds in. I'm either listening to market commentary, I'm either listening to podcasts, or I'm listening to looking up things that I need for technical reasons. I mean, we just don't go anywhere with them. So our majority is right here, and we decide what we want to listen to. I still like to tune in on the noon show and listen to my radio guys on our farm radio. But most of the other time, we're distracted farmers out here because we got auto steer, we have all this technology, but we're distracted with this thing because we can be learning so much other things while we're sitting in that seat and paying attention to many other, whether it's a world issue, whether it's a local issue. And so that's how we do it. And I put a lot of trust in my local crop consultant. I'm calling him, I'm on the phone, texting him back and forth all the time, especially this time of year. So I rely on a lot of the guys that have the eyes and ears right here in my backyard.
Trust is pretty important. I appreciate that comment. When you talk about learning new things, where do you go? Social media? Is it YouTube, Twitter, Facebook? What kind of things do you do, Tim?
I'm a YouTube guy. I'm 60 years old, but I tell you that YouTube is so helpful because if you have codes that come up on your tractor, you have something technical, there is not, I haven't found that there isn't a 5-minute video that can educate you really quick on how to fix it, or at least get directed into the right area so that you maybe are a little smarter about what you're working on. I probably use it more than I should, but I think it's a great resource. Social media, of course, there's a lot of things on social media that we look at besides just the pictures of the grandkids. But I do like seeing what other farmers are doing, whether it's conservation, how they're managing their cover crops and no-till. You can get on these groups and they're a wealth of knowledge on things that are really important that make a big difference to what I'm doing here in Iowa.
Sarah, Bob, what about you guys? What do you guys consider as far as social media?
But I am fairly active on Twitter. And I have a core group of friends that's active on there. From the agronomy world, we just kind of bounce some stuff back and forth, and it's fun. But I do enjoy being able to see what other farmers are doing, and share some things, and it's really fun. I'd be remiss to say that I use YouTube as well, and I'm actually in the process of trying to sort of invent a precision agriculture presence of I guess my own, on social media a little bit. So I'm kind of trying to work into that a little bit. I've always had an agronomy presence, but I kind of want it to be a little bit more focused on precision agriculture right now with my current job. And so that's kind of fun and interesting as well. But one of the things that I do dearly appreciate about some of the local farm news outlets is that they have worked really hard to figure out how to sort of participate with social media. Whether that's putting little posts up on Facebook or put tweets out on Twitter. I do appreciate that. I mean, there's a fun space in there where people just exchange fun things, but then it's I'm also on there to try to find some facts, but you have to know who you're looking at to find that information. If there's information coming from example like Don Wick on Twitter, well, yeah, I'm gonna look at that and read it. So those are some ways that I'm using social media, I guess, right now.
I'm not looking for a Don Wick or Red River Farm Network love fest here, but I appreciate the kind words. Bob, what about you as far as social media?
Well, certainly, as the other two have said, YouTube just has such a wealth of knowledge. And even when you want to think about buying a piece of equipment or some precision ag type of equipment, you can go there and there's a wealth of knowledge to be gained there. And I always feel that's a pretty honest. I got to admit, I follow Twitter closer than what I am on it. I like to read what people are thinking, markets, fuel, these types of things. When do you buy? What people are hearing that I'm not necessarily hearing. So yeah, your phone is on, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and you could just look up anything, and it is just so quick. So, but I want to go to some trusted friends sometimes on Facebook where they're having those discussions as well about ag. And I think that's important.